Hi everyone, welcome to this lesson on the social and cultural policies of the colonial regime, and the time period that we're going to be talking about is 1757 to 1857. And we'll talk about things like why was it termed a policy to begin with. It could have been given just the name of any reform, piecemeal way. We talk about modernization, westernization, what the Oriental approach was, and the importance given to humanitarianism during this period. This is an introductory lecture on this. तो जो questions आते हैं आपके एग्जाम में, जैसा कि मैंने पहले ही बताया है, they are not just fact based. So we will of course be doing factual details as well. For example, the abolition of sati, the abolition of or the control on female infanticide, and so on and so forth. But in this lesson, you will first understand how these social and cultural policies came about during the British rule in India. So why policy? Now, the first thing that you need to understand is that whatever colonial interventions were happening in Indian society and culture, they were neither random nor were they individual initiatives. They were directed by the needs of colonialism, which changed over the course of the 3 stages. And if you remember the 3 stages, we've discussed them in prior lessons. It would be good if you want to revise, you can just go to YouTube and check those out as well. Mercantilist phase, the laissez-faire phase, and then the investment capital phase. So because the needs of the British kept changing while they were in India, they used to modify their approach to these reforms accordingly, and that is why the term policy has been used. Till 1813, there was mostly non-interference in social, religious and cultural life of Indians, barring a few cases. Such as, there were a lot of concerns around sati. So some steps were being taken to abolish and control the practice of sati. After 1813, the requirement of colonialism changed. And along with this, there were also new developments that were taking place ideologically and politically within Britain itself. And this changed the view of the state with respect to Indians. So what happened then is that while the material colonial interests wanted India to make extensive leaps in terms of becoming a good market with respect to both demand and supply, new social and cultural concerns were also taking root. And this started a very important process in Indian society called westernization. But what were the objectives of this said intervention that was happening? The first one was purely in the interest of colonial rule. What happened is that the British, when they saw that India needs to become a big market for their goods as well as supply of cheap raw materials, they had to ensure that there would be demand for those goods. Now, merely by keeping quiet and merely by keeping India as is, obviously it would not generate any kind of traction for the sort of goods that they wanted to market. So for example, if they were taking cotton from here and making printed cloth, dyed cloth over there and then selling it in India, there had to be some kind of development of aesthetic sense on those lines among Indians. So they sought to introduce westernization. About this, Thomson and Garrett, whose names you can see on the slide here, Thomson and Garrett, they said that the mood and methods of the old brigade were changing into those of modern industrialization and capitalism. Along with this, science and technology had also opened new vistas of human progress, and there were social changes in a new direction. 2 important events were also happening or had happened, which gave rise to new values. And you have to understand this, when you are talking about society and culture, it is influenced by events that happen. It is not static, it is very dynamic, keeps evolving. So with the Industrial Revolution, obviously there were new values that came, and then with the French Revolution, the idea of liberty, equality and fraternity came. This changed the mindset of educated people in Britain, and many of them were motivated to unleash these new liberating changes in the traditional or so-called backward Indian society as the British perceived it. And we have spoken about this before, the white man's burden, or the white man being on a civilizing mission when it came to a place like India, and that is what they kept in mind when they sought to introduce changes. Of course, see, again, it is not black and white. When you say white man on a civilizing mission, yes, there were certain changes, certain laws that they introduced which did away with certain menace prevalent in society back then, whether it was sati, whether it was infanticide and so on. But at the same time, considering all of India to be backward and all kinds of practices to be backward was a wrong note. What were the characteristics of this new thought or new line of thought that was emerging? The first was faith in reason and science. This was very, very important. The second thing was humanism. So where you were looking around at society and diagnosing the problems that existed. And the third one was humanitarianism. That is having confidence in the capacity of human beings to progress. And in fact, the 18th century was called as the age of reason only. So this is something that they adhered to. Now, this was happening. These new currents of thought in Britain itself were coming in conflict with the earlier conservative outlook. So even among people in Britain who ran the Indian administration or who were determining the policy for India, there were certain clashes. The older attitude, known as the conservative or traditional or orientalist school, they said that making a few changes in India, as few as possible, was the way to go. So for example, there were people like Edmund Burke, Thomas Munro, Elphinstone, Metcalfe, then Baden-Powell. They all said that India is autonomous, self-reliant, and you have to maybe introduce Western ideas and concepts to some extent, but firstly it should not be a radical one. It should be very, very gradual and not in all spheres, because they did not want to disturb the social stability that existed. Then from the 1800s onwards, this conservative attitude was fast giving way to a new attitude, which was sharply critical of Indian society and culture, and the Indian civilization was condemned as static. So Indian customs were considered inhumane, uncivilized, barbaric even, and then they sought to change all this. Now, because they sought to change all this, they made clear-cut legal and administrative interventions in Indian society through governance and administration, and behind this, the tradition of secularism was the motivating factor. The doctrine of humanitarianism also fueled the desire to improve Indian society and culture. Over here you can see this. This trend gathered momentum in the 1820s, and proponents have been called radicals by Bipin Chandra. The proper term could be said to be utilitarianism. Okay, because what is happening is that in social sciences, when do you call someone a radical? When political policy and social action via the state, which calls for drastic and immediate action, and this is what the Governor Generals from the time of Bentinck were doing. So the term radicals could also be used, and humanitarianism and utilitarianism could also be used. Why utilitarianism? Because you were seeking to do greatest good for the greatest number of people. That is what the British Empire in India sought to show. Then there were also people who subscribed to paternalism. So who were these people? They treated Indian people as children who were not mature and knowledgeable enough to be involved in administration, and therefore they would have to do some kind of westernization and modernization at their behest if they wanted things to change in India and to change the lives of Indians for the better, or so they thought, right? But what was happening is that there was a policy of introducing modernization in some respects and blocking and preventing it in other respects, some sort of arrested development. Why was there arrested development? We have mentioned this before. See, the prime concern of the British remained to preserve their rule in India and to preserve their hold over the Indian territory and the colonization of India. Now, if they would have really overhauled the entire system, it may not have gone in their favor, because obviously everyone might have protested to a great extent. Here they were gradually, injecting little reforms and showing that yes, we are concerned about you, but at the same time not so much that we will alter your entire social structure. Okay. There was also this idea of secularism, but at the same time also some missionary zeal, and the British believed that if Indians were exposed to modern education, they would naturally question their own religious beliefs and customs, and the demand for any kind of social cultural change would come from Indians themselves. So this is the background, and now in the next lesson we'll be looking at what sort of changes were introduced and who were the proponents of these socio-cultural reforms. Thank you.